operating 3 theories. Pluto also needed a rock to get its moons. People, these are not Robin Hood rocks. They are not stealing from one and giving to the other. Large impacts also did this. Saturn needs a rock to get its rings. Uranus needed a rock to get tipped over with its rings. Neptune, it needed a rock to warm it up because it puts off twice as much heat as it receives from the sun. Do the math on that one real quick. Miranda, it's actually a moon of Uranus. You got to get a load of this. The latest theory says it took at least 5 rocks to get it to be that ugly. We live in a rough neighborhood. When aliens fly by, they lock their doors. Okay, perhaps the real theory is, if the evidence doesn't match the theory or the narrative, hit it with a big rock. Let's jump to biology and get out of the stars. Abiogenesis, life from non-life, otherwise known as narrative from nonsense. Amino acids, this is where it's going to get deep. Get your cards out. Amino acids are the smallest molecule that we play with when we're talking about biology, okay? There's 500 of them found in nature. There's 22 of them found in all life on Earth. There's only 22. Okay? All amino acids can be left or right-handed. And if I didn't have to hold this mic, I would show you. But imagine putting your right glove on your left hand. Doesn't fit, right? So it's the same atoms, same elements, and they're popped in one direction. But you can also pop them in the other direction, left and right-handed. Okay. If you randomly mix the chemicals required to make those amino acids, you get about a 50-50 ratio. There's not one way that's more likely than the other. So half and half. Only left-handed amino acids are found in any organism on Earth. Left-handed only. Go back to that mud puddle and do the math on that. Here's the really bad part. The right-handed amino acids aren't just don't care situations. They're toxic to life. They are actually found in venoms. That's an amino acid. Okay, so click them together and we get proteins. How many do we have to click together? Small proteins, 300 or so, usually larger. Big ones, 27,000 amino acids to make one protein. That's a long chain. Humans have about 20,000 different proteins to make life, and up to 20 million copies of each one of them in each cell. Numbers are starting to get pretty big here, right? To make 2 to 3 billion proteins in each cell. Okay, they don't click together like beads. They can only click. Remember the ones you had when you were a kid and it was like this one pops into this one and you get the red one and the purple one? That's not how they go together. Each amino acid can connect at multiple points. And that's a difficulty. That makes trillions of possibilities. But only one is correct. And functional. And yes, that's an immense protein right there that you're looking at. Pretty cool though. So the odds of 150 linked chain by random chance connecting in the right orientation, in the right order. So it's kind of neat. You can use amino acids, think of them as an alphabet. There's 22, so we're close, right? So you're spelling words, you're writing a book. Boom. That's an easy way to look at it, right? Well, if you rearrange all the letters, it stops being a book. To give you an idea what these odds are, that's a big number, and it really doesn't hit anybody. What are the odds of a blind person solving a Rubik's Cube? Pretty random. That's a big number. What about 22 blind people solving a Rubik's Cube, each of them? Here's what's worse. They have to solve it blind at the exact same time. Here's a meaningful example. Hemoglobin. Everybody knows what that is? Red blood cells? That's what carries oxygen to all. All right. Hemoglobin has 574 amino acids. They have to go in exactly the right order, in exactly the right orientation. Almost any variation in orientation or order of the 574 amino acids in hemoglobin causes hemoglobinopathy. It's a big long word to say broken. And it's lethal. Okay? There's a few that aren't, like some of the ones that you guys have probably heard about, like sickle cell anemia. That happens to be one where it can be off still works, still carries oxygen, but we all know that it also causes other problems. So it's not quite lethal, but can be. All right, so pay no attention to the people behind the curtain, otherwise. Let's apply some critical thinking and common sense to what we're told. This is going to go deep. Ready? Life from non-life. This is life from rocks. Add water, heat, sunlight, whatever you want, a lightning strike, we're going to make life. Have a mud puddle. To make a simple cell. Okay, the first cell had to have the following abilities, and I am talking the first cell. Let me show you how impossible this is. It would have had to metabolize, had to be able to eat food and survive, right? It had to reproduce. It had to form membranes. It had to respond to stimuli. That's sharp or hot, and that's food. Go away from that one, head towards that one. Good stuff. And it had to be able to grow and develop. First cell. Random chance. Here's what the real first cell would have looked like. Does that look simple to you? I've built cars and I wouldn't touch that. I have a question about life from non-life. So, single cell to multicellular. I love this. I actually pulled this from one of those people. Throughout history, life on Earth, multicellular life evolved from single cells numerous times. But explaining how this happened is one of the major evolutionary puzzles of our time. It happened all over the place. It's not happening now. We don't know how it happened, but trust me, it did. So, who's the believer? Did you notice, plants or animals, there are no two-celled, 3, 4, 7, 100, 200, 300, 600. Nope. The smallest animal is a rotifer, generally speaking. Plant, duckweed. Everybody's seen this. It's on every aquarium and every mall in America. Both of those have thousands of cells. So you have two kinds of life. You have single-celled organisms, and then you have the busload of them over there. Multi-celled organisms, and nothing in between. Seems odd. Some single-cell creatures can form colonies, but understand the difference. You can call that a multi-celled organism, but it's not. It's a collection thereof. Each individual one is self-sufficient. That's why it's not called a multicellular organism. It's not the same. It happened throughout history, but not now. I have a question. Sexual reproduction. It's an adaptive feature which is common to almost all multicellular organisms and various unicellular organisms. Currently, the adaptive advantage of sexual reproduction is widely regarded as a major unsolved problem in biology. Okay, I lied. You can use your cards and keep score. That's 2. Major problem. Okay, let's walk through the logic of this. This is where I'm going to hurt your brain. As stated, the first single-celled organism had to be able to replicate, right? We don't know how that happened either. Let's not go there. Then, 2 creatures had to be able to reproduce incorrectly and differently incorrect, but remain compatible. One had to evolve into a male and one had to evolve into a female, and it had to be cooperatively useful. They had to produce cells that only have half their DNA. That's interesting. Such that together they produce offspring that had the same error. They could produce either male or female. Their belief is not based on evidence. Then multiple species had to do exactly the same thing, and they all had to change successfully and live. And they try and call it fact, not theory. There is zero evidence or logic on how this occurred. I have a question. Speciation. Another fancy word. Engineers love to do this. All that means is from one thing to another. Cats to dogs. That's because dogs have owner and cats have staff. Okay. If it could be demonstrated, this comes from our favorite guy, Charlie Darwin, ready? If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ, not organism, something within a creature, which could not possibly been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, one little bit at a time, my theory would absolutely break down. But I can find no such case. Now, I don't want to bash Charles Darwin. In his day, with the best equipment he had, what he could see didn't give him the evidence he needed. In large part, if you actually do a good bio study on Charles Darwin, he was the victim of his own fame. Okay? Origin of species. Well, today, we have far better equipment. Wonderful science. True, rock solid science. Changing from one thing to another, there's a list that cannot evolve by small changes over time. It's enormous. There are many things that everything had to be there at the same time, at the same moment, and it's the only way it could have been created, right? It states that there are numerous, Michael Behe, if you haven't looked this guy up, he's brilliant, and he does a fabulous job. He calls it, gotta read. Irreducible complexity. What that means is there comes a point where you can't get any smaller. You can't have any one more missing piece. His keynote on this is to use a mousetrap. Of all the 5 pieces you have, if you remove one of them, one of the 5, you don't catch 20% less mice. You don't catch any. So it's either all there and it's a mousetrap, or it's not. And he is the one that came up with this. And it's a fabulous thing. He's got a lot of videos out there. I highly recommend him. So, Charlie, it has been demonstrated. And that theory absolutely breaks down. In case you're wondering, all this stuff up here is the library that I used to study. I want to tell you one thing. This is not easy to find, and I'm going to prove it to you right now. I'll give you a month and a year. November of 2016. Royal Academy of Science came together to talk about Darwinistic theories and neo-Darwinism. I dare you to find that. It should have been on headline news, and it's unlikely any of you know about it. It's well worth the look. I won't tell you what it is. I won't spoil it. Darwinian evolution would be rejected if presented to today's academic as a new scientific theory. If you brought it today, they would laugh you out of the laboratory. So let's talk about information in DNA. All right, I took a pot shot at this one. All right, no kids in the room, good. All of you guys, most of you guys should understand. Ready? If you were told that Pong, okay, that was a cool game when I was a kid, was running on a Commodore 64 in 1982, and it was found in the basement, still running, but it evolved into Wimbledon 2024. Would you believe them? It evolved on Commodore 64. Don't ask. If you don't know, you're going to have to look that one up. What if they told you this? Became this. Who's the believer? All right, we're going to talk about geology. I only did this so you can suffer through this for a second. I'm going to scare you. Ready? We're going to go over each one of these one at a time. No, we're not. I'm going to just pick out some ones I really, really like. Geologic column. You know what that is? Anybody ever seen that before? All right, geologic column. Do you know there's only one place on Earth you could actually find that geologic column? Do you know where that is? Nope, not even close. A school textbook, that's it. Grand Canyon's not even close, and I'm going to show you why in a second. The greatest number that you can find together on Earth is about 5. In most places, they're found either missing layers, oh, you're going to love this, out of sequence, inverted, or containing the wrong epoch of fossils. Right, dirt, wrong critter. Want to bet? Everest. How is it there are sea creatures fossilized on the highest point above sea level? There's a couple of ways to get there, but it's not the one you're being told. What kinds of fossils? Trilobites. Everybody's seen that one. There's a couple other things you might recognize, but most wouldn't. Here's the key point. Just so we're clear, those are the critters. They're on top of Everest. So all of those layers across all of the Himalayas, what, they're just not there? They eroded? Is that how we got Europe? I don't know. Okay, Grand Canyon, I gotta go into this. And if you don't know this guy, Brian Nichols has got to be one of my favorites. This guy is brilliant. And I cheated, and I actually asked him, so I got permission. I stole some of his stuff because he puts so much work into his presentations, and there's one I just couldn't beat and I couldn't replicate. But Brian Nichols, jump on YouTube, look him up by name. He's got some fabulous stuff that will cause your brain to stir for months. Kevin Lay also does a series on that too. You can look up either one. So let's talk about some of those missing layers. Okay, these are the layers that you find in Grand Canyon. They're all named. The tilted ones, that's a whole story. Now you gotta watch Brian stuff because I can't beat him. These are the eras. Put the squirrel away. All right. Permian, Pennsylvania. These are all the ones you found. So here's a cool one. Those are all the layers, more described in all the textbooks you see, right? So cool, let's compare them. Upper Devonian, there they are. Cool, they're actually on the chart. Bonus! Wait, Cambrian, they're down there. That's fine. Some layers just don't like other layers. 100 million years. Nothing happened across most of what we know as Arizona. I'm sure that happened. My beliefs are based on evidence. There's another theory out there. There's a bug involved. So let's take a look at this. Here's another thing about the Grand Canyon. Okay, missing layers, that aside. 100 million, we can forgive that. Okay, you can, I can't. This is what they tell you. Here's all the flat layers. But what do we... This is what it should actually look like. I mean, think about it. Most people don't think about it because you go and you hear their story and you go, I like that story. They tell you that, oh, these layers came across and they compressed and they made another flat layer and they, oh man, hold on. I want to give Brian proper credit. And one layer after another, flat as a pancake, like somebody's making breakfast Sunday morning. Flat layer after flat layer for hundreds of miles. I'm not kidding. Hundreds of miles, flat as can be. No erosion. Let's actually think about this. Apply critical thinking and go, what should that have looked like? Here you go. So you get a layer, and then it erodes. And if you got another one, not sure where it came from, New Mexico, that's my bet, and it'd fill in, and then it would erode. And another one, and it would erode. And then a big layer. And another one. And then you get a creek, and a river, and deposits, and erosion. That is what the side of Grand Canyon should look like. Not hundreds of miles of flat layers. And that's the problem. We told a story and believe it because it sounded good, but when you actually stop and go, wait, run that by me again? About those millions of years. All those layers took millions of years to be slowly laid down one by one. You still buying it? So did these. Okay, now I'm lying. Actually, those layers didn't take millions of years. It took a couple of years, not a couple of million. Couple of years. In 1980, everybody's aware of Mount St. Helens, right? Dropped all that ash in the orange section. In June of 80, it did it again, and it dropped another batch of ash, right? 2 years later, huge mudslide. Now, what you don't see, that's a yellow layer. It was a mud flow. That mud flow, when it first came down, was actually hundreds of feet thick, okay? There's sections that were 400 feet thick. Sorry. That mud overtopped an earthen dam downstream. And when it did, nothing holding it back anymore. And all of it was gooey and wet. And it cut that canyon, not only the hundreds of feet to get rid of most of the mud that was on top, but the mud etched its way through 2-year-old ash piles that had been condensed and hardened. And it did it within 3 hours. So those millions of years, nobody knows that they took millions of years. Hundreds of miles of perfectly flat layer after layer with a lack of erosion or animal burrows. I don't care where you go in the world. If you find a flat section of land, you're going to find something dug a hole in it. No disturbances whatsoever. Critical thinking would have you believe that the story you're being told is a lie. Okay, there is enough evidence to question that narrative. What is lacking is an intellectually honest talk from those that can only see deep time. Now who's the believer? Fossil problems. I love this. Geology claims sediments have been laid down for millions of years. So this is millions of years, right? Look at those layers. How do you explain this? You know what those are? Anybody? Show of hands. There. What are they?
Polystrate fossils.
Polystrate fossils. They're trees. You go, well, trees could be standing for a long time. They're not all right side up. I haven't seen many trees grow upside down. How do you explain that? Trees slowly buried grow roots. If you start burying a tree slowly, you will grow roots in the section that is now underground, right? So these trees were dead while being buried because there are no roots. There's also no tops on most of them. There's not even a root ball, which is odd. So it tells you it was a catastrophic event. Okay? So these guys were buried, dead, standing upright for millions of years without rotting, breaking, falling, eroding, being eaten. They just stayed there. How many of you guys have a fence made out of wooden posts? How many of them are a million years old? Just saying. Think that's hard to explain? Rocks don't bend. Don't believe me? Go find a piece of glass, try it. No, don't. By the way, I want you to know that that is not fragmented rock. If you go and actually slice that, at a molecular level, you will see that they were bent. You can't bend rock. But you can work clay. There's something to think about. How about that one? That happened. That was not created in Hollywood. All right, let's jump out of the rocks and jump back into rocks. Tissues and materials. This one's kind of cool, but it's going to be quick. I want to see something. Anybody ever heard the name Mary Schweitzer? Dr. Mary Schweitzer. Oh, cool. Some of you guys actually know this. Okay, she was the first. She wasn't the first to discover it, but she was the one to publicly hit national news with this. She found soft tissue in the femur of a T-Rex. Everybody clear? It's like one of the giant bones. Since then, there have been over 400 fossils, 30 different species, 12 different tissue types, 15 different ages, and 9 different countries. Well, let's walk through the logic of that. We're talking soft tissue. All right, fossils by definition are what used to be organic material is replaced by rock at a molecular level. So what was calcium or what was carbon becomes silicates, things like that, right? So it's no longer actually tissue, it's rock. That's not rock. If you go online, this is awesome, and it's so worth doing. Look up on YouTube, 60 Minutes actually did a special on her. And it was very disruptive to the entire paleontological community because she found soft tissue. She dissolved all the things around it, grabbed it with a hook and stretched it, and when she let go, it snapped back. It is soft tissue. This is bioorganic material. It doesn't live 56 million years untouched and still flexible. It doesn't. Period. Come on, how many went to college and had a refrigerator? It does not last that long. I can't get it to last a month. I still eat it. Let's take a look at explosions in life, right? Everybody's heard of this one, right? Cambrian explosion. Almost everybody knows what this is. Do you know what it means? The Cambrian explosion says that all those critters up there suddenly appeared. None of them existed before that time. I'm talking like the crab didn't say, oh, meet my four-legged cousin. Nothing. There was no precursors to any of the creatures you see. They suddenly showed up like, ha-ha. All right, just in case you're thinking like 12 critters did it. No. Let's take a look at this guy. Chordates. You know what that is, right? Anything with a spinal cord? Politicians excluded. That little guy right there. He represents all of those and more. And it shows cows, deer, camels, all of it. That one creature, everything in that family showed up all of a sudden, never having anything before it. Naming it does not explain it. And that's the difference. Cambrian explosion is not the only one. It's definitely the most famous. Here's part of what they're not telling you. All of these were explosions. Origin of life, photosynthesis, plants, right? Getting energy from the sun. Avalon explosion, flying critters, right? Flowering plants suddenly erupted. Butterflies. And, wait, we got more. The Carboniferous insect explosion, could have done with that. Done without that. Triassic? Oh wait, it wasn't just the Jurassic, it's Triassic. We're going to get a whole new set of movies. And the one I like most, and so should you, Origin of Homo. You know why they call it the missing link? Because it's not there. All right, coelacanths. Anybody know what that is? That is the fossil of a fish that stopped having fins and started getting lobes that was on its way to feed so it could walk out of the ocean. Any buyers? For the longest time, they found these and they dated them back to 410 million years ago. And they said that the youngest one was about 66 million years. Odd that all the fossils look the same. That's how they could tell which one it was. Oops. December 23rd, 1938, a fisherman off the coast of South Africa. This is not a fishing story. I mean, it is, but it's not. Brought one of these guys up. Between 38 and 75, 84 specimens were caught. It seems that evolution ignored this fish for 400 million years. Because there he is. Where's the evolution? How about the horseshoe crab? Everybody knows what this little guy is, right? There's fossils like these. You can actually get them for cheap. They're kind of cool. They have found hundreds of these little guys, right? They date back to the oldest being 440 million years ago. They love that word, million. Evolution is supposed to drive toward the apex of the species, right? That's what they tell you. Survival of the fittest. Huh. That would mean that that guy showed up on the scene as the best of the best 440 million years ago. Still the same. Where's the evolution? Let's look at some fossil oddities. Ready? Insects. Oh yeah. He clearly evolved. Wait. That guy? Everybody gets these every spring. Where's the evolution? That guy. That is not my finger. Small animals? This guy. He evolved. Now he sells insurance. Feeling a little jumpy? That guy, he hasn't even moved. Where's the change? Where's the story? Where's the evidence? Millions of years and they're still identical. Evolution? Into what? Okay, the salesman? I think that's de-evolution, my opinion. All right, I'm going to jump out of the science and let's actually talk about stuff that is biblically related, because this can be a little fun. Ready? Events and places that are actually in the Bible. Uh-oh, there we go. Thought I was going to have to yell for a minute. All right, archaeology. Now, I'm going to give you a list and we're going to rapid fire through these, but for the longest time, there are things written in the Bible and people have always said, oh, they're just stories. They're nice stories, but they're just stories. They didn't really happen. So I'm going to show you what an atheist said. I'm going to show you what the archaeologist found. Ready? Jesus wouldn't have been crucified except that we proved it with, don't ask me to say that, I've never been able to pronounce that. If Jesus were crucified, he wouldn't have been buried in a tomb. However, that guy was found in an ossuary. It's a bone box. No evidence that Jesus rose from the grave, except here's a weird one. Caesar made an edict that said, if any bodies are stolen, the people stealing it shall be put to death. That's kind of an odd thing to say, don't you think? Around the time that Christ passed. The pool where Jesus healed the blind man does not exist. Oops. And there it is, the pool of Siloam. Discovered in the right place biblically. That's one of the coolest things. There's so many things in the Bible that give indications of where it is, and then somebody finds it there. Okay? There's no evidence of Hebrews living in Egypt except we found a Varus. We found Joseph's tomb, and I love this. We found the canal of Joseph. Do you know where that is? It runs parallel to the Nile. They actually tapped off of it to feed an area of water. And they still call it the canal of Joseph today. It's still Joseph's canal. Is it going that bad? I'm wearing out a microphone. Batter up. Woohoo! Next. There's no evidence of Caiaphas. Oops, found a bone box. Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Let's say it's the same guy. There's no evidence of James. Found another one. Jacob, which means James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Okay, I'm not saying it's the only case, but that does seem rather unique. No proof of the Exodus except in the Bible. And you will find that. Hunt that down. The Iberware papyrus is fascinating. You actually have to look at it. They think it's a writing of fiction. What it actually is, it's Exodus from an Egyptian's view. And it is fascinating. There's no writing in the time of Moses. They couldn't write. Except now we found Proto-Sinaitic scripts proving there was. They should be more careful about what they say doesn't exist because we keep finding it. Israelites were never in Egypt. There is no evidence. And then we came across the book Brooklyn Papyrus, and it talks about all the servants, and they have Hebrew names. That's kind of embarrassing. No evidence of Hebrews in Egypt or their gods. Except, I'm not going to get that one either. Yahweh and his Asherah. There's no evidence of Hebrews in the kingdom of Amenhotep II. And then we found the Berlin pedestal, which says Israel. It's not quite clear. There's a piece of it nicked off, so there's Rome. There's no proof of Exodus in the Bible again, except we found the Merneptah stela, and it boasts in Egypt. Well, it's not just Egyptians. They all do this. When they write something down, they make themselves sound great. And it says, Israel is laid waste, but not at sea. So they survived, but they didn't exist there. Okay? There's no evidence of Pontius Pilate, except they found a stone that says Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. Okay, should have waited on that one. There's no evidence of Jericho in biblical times. And then we found it. What's fascinating, it actually matches the biblical description. Remember the window, throwing the red cloth out? When they found Jericho, there was one section that hadn't been demolished, and there was one window in it on a wall. I wasn't there, I'm not saying, but that seems strikingly interesting. Bible history. Now this is where things get really tough. I'll preface this with, this is not my realm of expertise. I am not a researcher myself. I'm an accumulator. And there are brilliant men out there that put this together. And I try and bring it together so I can share it with you and bring it down to a level where those big words we can crack open and put on the table and go, that's all it needs. So, with that being said, Dr. Metzger compared three famous ancient literary texts, right? The Iliad, Homer's Iliad, familiar? Okay, most of you don't know the Mahabharata. It's an ancient Hindu text, right? And the New Testament. Okay, they had 15,000, 250,000, 20,000 lines. They were looking for corruption from one copy to the next. So everybody's heard that argument. It was like, oh, it's been translated and rewritten so many times it's so far off. This is the data. This is where science meets English. It's not English, but it is literary works. The Iliad had a 5% variation rate. That's not bad. It means 764 lines were corrupted. 1 in 20. Not bad. The Mahabharata had a 10% variation rate. That's 25,000 lines. That's starting to look like newspapers. The New Testament, 0.2%. 1/5 of 1%. Only 40 lines in the entire New Testament. I'm not talking like they compared two. They compared multiple copies and found 40 lines corrupted. This is what it looks like graphically. All right, and how many did they compare? Couple. Compared to all the other ones they have, those are all the other books. Those are all the copies that are biblical. So it's not like we're trying to fish out one or two copies. They have vast resources to compare. Here's some interesting stuff. The New Testament has been proven to have been written within 50 years of the life of Jesus Christ. Some of these others, the closest iteration of the writing after the events had happened, some of them are like, what is that, 400? Some of them are 1,000. I want to put that in perspective. 1,000 years after something happened, you write about it, would be like somebody today writing a new book on the sinking of the Titanic. How accurate do you think that would be? Versus 40 years after. All right, this is kind of neat. I didn't know this, and so this was a lot of fun to research for me. There are only 10 known and confirmed non-Christian sources that are writings about Jesus and Christians within 150 years of Jesus' life. Non-Christian sources. Because remember that at the time, Jewish sources were actually compatible to Christianity, not in agreement. By comparison, there's only 9 non-Christian sources that mention Tiberius Caesar. We would think of it as the leader of the free world at that time. So there's some guy off in some little place that's more famous than the leader of the free world. In total, there's only 10 sources that reference Tiberius Caesar. One of them is the Bible. By comparison, there's 43 sources, religious and non, that talk about Christ. Acts, this is a cool one. Most people don't know this. In the book of Acts, there's 84 facts that are provable today that he was actually there. Like where things are, how deep the water is, the trade winds, the seasons, how things work. 84 things have been able to be proven today in the book of Acts. And at the same time, he wrote about 35 miracles. With the facts in mind, it seems reasonable to conclude that the author of Acts, who I believe was Luke, was an eyewitness of the events recorded, or that at the very least he had access to reliable eyewitnesses. 84 facts, that's a lot. Think about this. Had Luke written of miracles that were contemporary but erroneous, as in if he lied and just augmented his story with some miracles, the writings would likely not have survived to this day. Imagine writing about Kennedy's assassination today and then describing something that miraculously happened during that. People today would go, that book is fiction. It's unlikely to say. It's not true. Like the book of Acts, Gospel of John. But he only records 7, but at least he gave a reason why. I thought that was really cool. He talked about turning the water into wine, healing of the son, feeding 5,000, all of those, right? And raising Lazarus from the dead. Okay, he takes the time to explain. He says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. He did it on purpose. But these 7 are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So he still wrote about things that were very, very true, demonstrable. You can still find them today. The book of Isaiah, I love this, is saturated with prophecy. There are 61 of them that talk about Christ. Right? Of those 61, there's an argument out there that say some prophecy could describe the life of many other men throughout history. It's utterly desolate, given that Christ fulfilled them all. So we're just going to talk about 8. The odds that any man in any time in history fulfilled 8 of the 61 prophecies would be 1 in a lot of zeros. The reason I put that next number? The estimated number of people that lived ever on this planet, 117 million. There's a lot more zeros past that. So some fun facts. Of all the sources, Christian and non, this is cool. Jesus lived during the time of Tiberius Caesar. He lived a virtuous life. Everybody agreed on that. He worked wonders, miracles. He had a brother named James. He was claimed to be the Messiah. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He was crucified on the eve of Passover. Darkness and an earthquake occurred when he died. This is not just in the Bible. It's in other works that are not religious. His disciples were willing to die for their belief. And Christianity rapidly spread as far as Rome. And his disciples denied the Roman gods and worshipped Jesus as a god. And that's written in so many more places than just the Bible. So, 2 Peter 3 and 4. First of all, you must understand this. In the last days, mockers will come, following their own desires, will ridicule us by saying, what happened to the Messiah, the promise of his return? Ever since our ancestors died, everything continues as it did from the beginning of creation. Millions of years. He wrote about it. He warned us. He knew this had happened. The mockers, when I talked about earlier, you can ask a few. Dawkins once said, well, how do you talk to a Christian? And he said, just mock them. That's all. Just mock them. That does not sound like an intellectual to me. If you want to have a debate, let's talk. 2 Peter. Now there are false prophets among the people, just as there also will be false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce destructive heresies and even deny the master who bought them. There are churches today that will cancel you for teaching 6 days of creation, for teaching Genesis. At least I've heard. You must not listen to the words of that prophet or that diviner of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to make known whether or not you will continue to love the Lord your God with all of your heart and soul and all of your mind. Science and the Bible are not separated. The more science we find, the more science backs up the Bible. I've spent 20 years hunting this down. I've spent 5 years teaching it. We'll see where this goes from here. May you always be found in his grove. Thanks for listening. I'm up for any questions. Anything you've got those cards, and I will take on any questions you might have. I've done this for a long time, and I love to share everything I've found. So, if you don't want to listen to me, there's some things you can borrow. Thank you. No, you can't borrow. I'll tell you where to find them. My wife won't let you. My wife won't let me.
Okay, so I guess we're starting Q&A, right?
Have at it.
All right. So if you have a question, let me know. I'll get you the mic. Don't say anything until you got the mic. So let's go.
I put him to
No
sleep.
questions.
That actually surprises me. If nobody has any questions, I have some more stuff I could share. What time is it? How bad did I do?
You did well.
What are the odds I actually hit it? Okay, just for the record, that's never happened in 5 years.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you know how the, I guess it would be the geologists, explain the polystrate trees?
Actually, that is one of the biggest problems. It is often completely ignored. There is no description of how and why. There's all kinds of stories. It's like, and it's not just trees. There's one you can look up that's in a chalk cliff in California, and it's a whale standing on its tail, completely vertical, intact, complete. I'm sure it died standing on its tail. No. They avoid them, and I have to tell you this, I'm not trying to give excuses for it. There are a number of disciplines that will tell you if the evidence they find matches their narrative, they'll publicize it. If it doesn't match it, they'll just not mention it, and they'll put it in a footnote. And if it contradicts it, they will bury it, and there's evidence for it, just so you know. Polystrate trees, there is no answer. They've tried, the saddest one was an ichthyosaurus. It was a dinosaur, it wasn't a tree. And they found it in what would have been ocean sediment, nose down to about halfway down its back, and it was gone. So what they actually said was, it died at the surface, made a beeline for the bottom, and embedded itself. That's the only one that can attempt to explain, and I'm not buying the story. Just so we're clear.
I think you would have a crunchier nose.
What, it breaks nails or something?
It's bad. And sadly, I mean, to be fair, I find some of these things, and the best way, science, you're going to make a theory. Everything you find should match that theory. And if it doesn't match the theory, you at least need to either adjust the theory or explain the anomaly, right? You don't bury it. It has to happen. There has to be an explanation for it. So when you find things like that, like here's some fun ones. Radio halos in granite. They're polonium. They only last 7 minutes. So how did it get in granite? That one's tough. There's dozens of scenarios that they talk about in that. I mean, when we go back to astronomy, maybe you don't know, the moon is... I'm being threatened with a squirrel again. The moon is receding away from the Earth. We found that because in the 70s, during the Apollo missions, we actually planted some things on the moon, and we found out we could shoot a laser at it, get the reflection back, and over time we found out it's leaving. It's not quick, but it's leaving. About 1.5 inches a year. I want to show you this method to look at theories and chase them back to fact. If the moon's leaving in 1.5 inches a year, it's been doing it for 4.5 billion years? No. Okay. At 200,000 years, I think, I gotta do the math, so forgive me, I don't have the exact number, but it hits what's called the Roche limit. The moon would break up, or it would be rolling around the equator of the Earth within 500,000 years. I don't see those tracks. I don't think it happened. There's a lot of scientific things like that. And like I said, most of my classes run 13 weeks, and I torture everybody for 13 weeks straight on one discipline at a time. So there's a lot out there. Anybody got any questions? I really appreciate you being, oh, ma'am.
I don't know if it's necessarily a question, but you made a comment about how you don't get invited to churches. How many churches or Christian groups, I guess, I don't know, are there that just will not believe in a recent creation and believe all the millions of years thing?
I don't actually know the data. It's disheartening to even read about it. There are a lot. There are churches that will tell you that you have to teach biblical evolution, which, in case anybody missed it, is just evolution with biblical in front of it to try and make you feel better. There are churches that will tell you that Genesis is nothing but...
A myth.
Yeah, it's a myth. It's just like the Greek gods. It's just their cultures. Oh, I lost the word. It's sometimers. But they'll tell you that it's mythology. That it's Genesis is nothing but Hebrew mythology, just like the Romans had their gods and the Greeks had their gods. Well, the Jews, or the Hebrews had theirs. They'll tell you that Adam and Eve weren't real people. They were a type of people that got adopted after they had evolved to humans. I've heard.
Yeah, well, and they're teaching a lot of that in seminaries now.
And they are. That's coming straight out of seminary. There are... I think the saddest thing in the world right now is the battle within churches. And it's the battle between Christians. We have enough to fight against. We don't need to fight against each other. But when it's heretical, there's some serious business to that. Me personally, I'm not a fan of the idea of a millstone around my neck. I'm just saying. I take this business very seriously. Teaching this terrifies me because I don't ever want to get it wrong. I will never bring to someone information. I just put it up real simply. Here's the Bible. Here's what's in the textbooks. And here's the raw data. And we'll go over it. And it's like, now, having seen both sides and seeing what they actually found, which one seems more plausible? You'd be dumbfounded. It's almost always supportive of the Bible. And that which is not supportive of the Bible doesn't necessarily support the other. There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff we just simply don't know. Sir?
You've presented a lot of good material. Are you putting any of this in written form, like some of your lectures and things like that, so other people can benefit who aren't here tonight?
On YouTube.
Apparently there's one on YouTube now. It's easy to find. It's got an ugly mug tied to it. But no, I'm going to be honest. I did this on a whim. It was during COVID, and I'm a social butterfly, and I was going bug nuts, and my own daughter said, "Dad, you have to do something with this vast expanse of useless knowledge."
I never said it was useless.
Dad, you have to beat on someone else. I'm tired of it. So I actually took it up as a bet. It was like, okay, we'll go see what they like. And I was disheartened at one point. It was a men's group, and I said, the conversation naturally turned that way. And the guy leading the class was like, "Hey, you know a lot about this. Can you talk about it?" And I did for probably 5-10 minutes. And I said, "Hey," when I got done, I was like, "I got a question." And everybody was like, "Wow, that's really interesting." And they're like, I said, "If I were to hold a class, would any of you be interested in it?" Well over half the class said, "Nope, couldn't care less." And that kind of hurt. And I'm like, I'm a nerd and I know it. And there's less than 1 in 100 that would ever even be entertained by this. And so I know that. But when I do my stuff, it's like bringing a bucket full of seeds to everybody. I don't expect you to know everything. I don't expect you to retain everything I said. Oh, heaven forbid. You know, walk a mile in my shoes, spend 5 minutes in my head. You'll be freaked out. I do this forever, and I just bring handfuls of seeds. I'm like, any of these look cool? And everybody goes like, I like that one. I could probably repeat that one. And that's all it takes. Some of us plant seeds, some of us water, some of us will harvest. And all it takes is enough to put a pebble in their shoe to make them go like, you know, that one thing that guy said, that really bugs me. Get them looking, get them seeking. Be that reflection of God in everything you think and everything you say and everything you do, and you will cause others to find that light. That's all I'm saying.
However, if you do want to pester him, he does have an email and he loves questions. So.
And if you ask me questions, I will chase squirrels for years. 20 so far.
That was awesome. I'm proud of you for putting it together. I cannot believe it.
So just in case you're wondering, for all the folks that are usually here, there's some people that have been through this abuse, and she actually has a notebook better than mine, and I teach it. But that said, yeah, this was a highlights reel of 5 years worth of classes. Thank you.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, if someone is new to this, you know, just wanting to find a lot of evidence, and you've said many times that it's, you go to look for it and it's hard to find.
It is. You have to be very explicit, not kidding. I mean, some of the stuff I've talked about tonight, Brian Nichols, Spike Posaris, if you look for them, you have to find them by name.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Is there a way with the video to have like kind of like notes that would direct people to scientists to search, where you could find their videos, where you could find people that you have found to be credible, that if they do have an interest in paleontology, if they do have an interest in biology, if they do have an interest in that they would know, okay, I'm going to start here with this particular scientist, or, you know, that they would feel like that's a good place to start. I don't know if that's something that you would.
No, it is, and honestly, I mean, what God never said it would be easy. He said it'd be worth it. And as steel sharpens steel, you make a great point that I've done so much of this, and I have it spread everywhere, but I don't have it readily shareable, and I should. And maybe this is the prodding I need to be able to take that, and I'll show you. Like, biology, origin of life, James Tour, got to be one of the 12 most brilliant men on the planet in that realm. But you have to know exactly what you're looking for. And I'm not kidding. If you look it up, James Tour, Origin of Life, just look that up. It's a 57-minute video on YouTube. It is stunning, and it is funny. And he speaks at such a high level. You've got, there's so many. But you're right. I need to put that together. There's so many. And I have researched them all. And I'm getting threatened with a squirrel again. You got to know, I chase squirrels. I didn't put the slide on here. But I have to be threatened to stay on track because I will follow them. Question?
Yes, I have two questions. First of all, what is your favorite proof of God and why?
You know, that's a very good question, but I want to challenge you. And I truly believe this to my soul. There is no proof of God, and there's a reason for it. If there were proof of God, there would be no need for faith. Now there's evidence for, and there's reasons to believe, but there's a difference between reason and proof. It's not unlike the other side of science either. They give you a story because they don't have the proof. They want you to believe something, and they look at our side of it, and they look at the Bible and say, it's just a story, you don't believe it. It requires faith, and it is hard. There's lots of evidence. It's so hard because I have one in each, but I mean, I think probably the most stunning has to be biology and the origin of life, and like, you're so missing out on abuse. Ready? But when I went into that whole thing on amino acids and proteins and cellular development and all of those things all the way through, when I talked about the gaps of the godless, the Grand Canyon is a creek compared to the gaps that you will find in biology. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. Is that fair?
Yeah, I like that because the Bible does say that faith is the evidence of things not seen.
It does.
And my second question is, because you mentioned that you came up with this during COVID, I just like
something good had to come out of it. Anyway.
I'm just curious, is this what you do full time?
Oh, no. No, I'm actually an engineer. One of the missteps, and I apologize, I caused this, but it said I was an aerospace engineer. I work in an aerospace place, but I'm an electrical engineer. That's not why. I actually started this study 20 years ago because of somebody's science report. And I found something, and I found this awesome video. It was done by Chuck Missler. And just so you know what kind of person I am, I don't just buy it at face value. I looked it up and I was like, he had some interesting stuff there. So I actually wrote. I was like, I liked it. Can you show me any of the evidence? Where was your documentation? Where did you get the source material? Because I'm not going to just buy what was said. He's an incredibly intelligent man. Miss him dearly. But I challenge you to always think critically. And so it was actually provided to me by somebody who's actually here. It was the first time I saw that video. I was like, wow, that's really good stuff. Can you send me the source material? And they did. They sent me like 2 megs. And I was like, that's a lot of good source material. And then I opened it. There's 2 megs of links. That's a lot of squirrels. And I have been chasing them ever since. Everyone I find, I'm like, oh, there I go. 3 months, I'll be back. Here we go. And yeah, that's kind of where I started on this. And it is a passion. I didn't realize what it would turn into. And I'm kind of heartbroken because of where it is, but I'm immensely grateful to the Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship for inviting me, because I've been off the podium for a year now because I haven't found a place to land. But hit me about 2 days ago. The adrenaline came back. I spent 3 months putting this thing together. And it was like, I could feel it on Wednesday. It was like, oh, here we go. I was really hoping you guys were going to bludgeon me with some questions, but we're good.
Hey, Duane?
Sir?
The Genesis is right there.
It is. Actually, the one that started all the shenanigans is very worn out. I actually had to have a CD replaced. Never worn one out. I didn't know you could do that. But yeah, if you have a bad enough disc player, choose it up. Your question, I'm sorry.
If it's true that there's no proof of God that exists, then why would we need spiritual blindness? It's a two-part question. That's the first part.
So let me start by saying, as an engineer, there's a distinct difference between proof and evidence. You'll never pick up a rock, roll it over, and it says made by God. But I do think you find his fingerprints on a great many things in life. So spiritual blindness, I guess I want to ask you what you mean by that. There's a number of ways to look at that.
Well, I have a completely different point of view. Let me ask my second question, and then I'll answer that. My second question is, tell me something that exists that is not proof of God.
Now see, that characterizes the question. I get it. You're right, there is nothing. I don't care what book you go to. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And nothing was created that was not created by Him. It's all created by God. But it's your perspective. There's two ways to look at this world, and only two. Either nothing exploded and became everything, or God created everything. There isn't anything in between. It's all about your perspective. But proof is a different thing. Did you see God create the first animal? Did you see God create the earth? No. It's not all about sight. But there's evidence, and that's the difference, right? I mean, we look at all of this, and if you have a perspective, if God has reached out and grabbed hold of you, you will look at everything and go like, wow. And the further you go, the more it just drops your jaw in awe of what He's created. It's not the same on a scientific scale from an engineering perspective as proof. So please understand, I do believe that everything we see is proof of God. But that's because I have to tell you where I stand before I tell you where I'm going to sit on the subject. I believe in God, and I know He did this. And there's no way this happened by random chance. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we agree. I think that Romans chapter 1 says that everybody already knows that there is God, and so I think that there's nothing that exists that's not proof. So everything is proof, because all of reality is proof once you understand who God is, what mathematics is, and what reality is. So somebody like a Richard Dawkins is just somebody that simply lives in spiritual blindness because he loves sin more than he loves the truth.
That is a fair assessment.
And I think that could even be proved mathematically.
Perhaps.
Could I add to that? Just the scripture, Hebrews 11:3 says, by faith we understand that the worlds were created by God, so that what is seen is not was not made out of what is visible.
True.
So that's the word of God you have right there. It's not absolute proof. It's by faith we understand it.
It is, and so all of you've been around carpet critters, drape apes, rug rockets, right? You give them a box of Legos, they take apart every cool thing you ever built, and they built their own thing, right? And they'll tell you a story like, hey, what is that? Oh, it's a spaceship. And they'll tell you how fast it can fly, how much it can carry, where it can go, they can land on the sun. They'll tell you this great story, right? And it takes an amazingly fertile mind, and they're wonderful to listen to. Difference between that and the Big Bang Theory and Darwinistic evolution, they're not 5, and there's more fertilizer. Oh, get another question.
This is not related to your talk, but I'm curious to know, have you ever made it up to Wyoming to the Anson Research Station?
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, this would take a bit, so I'm not sure I should do that. It's,
Well, you're talking about the dig up there, right?
right.
And I once got the privilege of having some wonderful people come and speak.
They own the property the dig is on.
Thank you so much for having done it. I still haven't been up there.
Okay.
I would love to.
I just thought if you would.
The longer I live, life's like a roll of toilet paper. The closer to the end you get, the faster it goes. I fear where I am on that one. I want to go up there, and I thank you so much for everything you guys did. But no, I still haven't gotten there. Oh, question at the back. I was hoping you'd come up with something. There's no way you could sit there and not say something. I saw your head buzzing. Thank you.
It's good to see you, Duane. Maybe another squirrel for you to chase, but I'm curious. The various fields you talked about, astronomy, biology, archaeology, something in our own current generation is consciousness. Have you looked into any of that? I know there's some speakers out there on that, but have you gone down any of those rabbit trails?
To be fair, no. I like to say it best, my mind is limited to the hard sciences. It is fascinating, but as soon as you delve into the brain, I'm afraid of my own. I'm not going to look at somebody else's. It is fascinating to look at the consciousness of that. One of the other things that I got, a squirrel somebody handed me that I'm afraid of and still is in the cage, is the, what do they call it? Life after death glimpses, that kind of thing. And it's fascinating. And that person unloaded a dump truck on me that I find fascinating and terrifying. I try to stick to what I can actually speak to. But it is a fascinating subject. We got another one. I'm glad you guys are starting to ask questions. I thought I actually put you to sleep.
I just had a question about when we're talking about proof.
Yeah.
So proof in the existence of God is one thing, but then with Jesus, when he was resurrected, with Thomas, and then when he showed his, Thomas was like, I need this proof, basically. I'll only believe if I actually see the hands and see the holes and put my hands into the holes. And Jesus did do that, and so he honored that, let him do it, and I would constitute that as proof that, okay, because they'd been eyewitnesses to his death, and then now to his resurrection. I think that is pretty solid proof, but I don't know if you would agree from your perspective. But anyway, so then of course Jesus says, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe, which would be all of us to this day, or even the people who were alive then and may have heard about it secondhand. And then additionally, I was reading the Gospel of Luke recently, where I came upon the part where it talks about how Jesus literally ate, like he broke bread again with them after he rose from the dead. And I count that as another example of proof, because they thought they were seeing a ghost. And so if you're seeing a ghost, you don't expect a ghost to literally just eat. Like you might think you're seeing an angel, but then, or something else, but then he literally broke bread and, ate it right in front of them and joined them in that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
But that's not proof we can show to an atheist.
Right.
That's proof to the...
I totally believe in the proof of Christ. I mean, let alone the disciples and the Christians and all that. Hands down, I agree with you. Something that exists right outside my brain's ability to grasp is the Trinity. And there's a difference between proof of God, and I know Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and like I said, it's just outside of my capacity. I understand it, sorta, I definitely accept it. Undoubted proof of Christ and his miracles and his divinity. No doubt. So if you're going with Christ, and he said, I am, right? Christ is God. That is proof of God. I will grant that, no doubt. It's the bigger picture. It's like trying to prove the Spirit. And it's like, I feel it, you feel it, I could describe it, and people would think I'm nuts. Not saying they're wrong. It's hard to describe. It's impossible to prove. Christ, not impossible to prove. Hands down. Even atheists would acknowledge that Christ was real, did do these things. And it was written about. That's proof. I totally agree with you there. Is that fair? Cool. Anybody else? Hit the nerd side, will you? No, they can't stay that late.
This has been very good, Duane.
Thank you.
I've got a book that I've been reading for several months here that I think you'd really enjoy. It'll be another squirrel chase for you.
Not my fault. He started it. Go ahead.
The title of the book is Your Designed Body.
Oh,
Have
that
you
is
heard
good.
it?
Not up here. That is good.
Yeah.
I've read the excerpts of it. That is really fantastic.
It was written by an MD along with a systems engineer. And they go through the complete body and everything. It's just incredible.
2 steps down the squirrel, and I promise I'll quit. Don't throw it. There was a recent study, and I want to say it was either Dartmouth or Stanford. One was putting together a team. This is not Christian based, believe me. They're antagonistic. She started pulling engineers into the biology department to describe how things work, how they came about, how they interact, and she started using engineers. You know what they discovered was the greatest superpower of that study? None of them had been poisoned with Darwinistic evolution. They looked at it and said, this is designed. For any of you guys that have kids, grandkids, whatever, and they're teenagers and you want to really hit them, really good stuff. YouTube, look it up. Science Uprising. Brilliant. And it's at the attention span that teenagers would love. Which means I liked it too. So, really fantastic stuff. And I could give you names, and I swear, if you send me an email, I will answer every one of you. I'm not teaching anymore, so I have time.
His email's here. All the references he used today are here.
There's a lot of good stuff out there. But Stephen Meyer has a brilliant book. Highly recommend aspirin with it because he does keep it at this level. Douglas Axe on biology does a phenomenal job of understanding the odds theory. So, yeah, good stuff out there. I'm going to stop squirreling. Anybody else? I can't tell you what tonight has meant for me. I truly appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for listening, for not so long asleep. Great stuff.
I do have one final question for you. What do you want to do with all these books? Are you just for people to peruse, or are you selling them, or what's happening?
Yeah, you can peruse them, take a look at it. In case you were thinking I might not be very well read, all the videos have been through hundreds of times. But some of the books, I'm still not there, but I have all the books because everything that's on that table is so worth reading.
Duane, they can take a camera, take a picture, and these are most of our sources.
Yeah, these are most of the sources. I have a lot of other online resources, but this is good stuff.
I wrote down the online ones.
Yeah, excellent.
Hey, Duane, if you had just a few of those books for people to start with.
Oh. Okay. Bias up front, I want you to know. Back to what I said about wars between Christians bother me. I want you to know that there's 2 competing theories out there about the flood of Genesis, right? Flood of Noah. There's the catastrophic plate tectonics, and there's the hydroplate theory. I'm going to tell you my bias up front. I've read both of them. They're very good work, both of them. But Dr. Walt Brown did a brilliant analysis of actually the cause and effect of every piece of everything he went through. As an engineer, as a scientist, as I look through it, the other one has a couple of things that are very difficult to explain that are quite miraculous. And I'm not saying it didn't happen, but given cause and effect, I have a bias. So I will tell you that In the Beginning is a brilliant book on the flood of Noah. I love that one. I want to share this because like I was saying, talking to others, that's the hard part, right? We're trying to share. This was given to me by Kevin Lake, and he said he only had a couple of copies and he treated them like gold, and I was so interested, and he actually mailed me it and didn't tell me. All of a sudden I get this box in the mail and said, what's that? I can't put into words how much I appreciate what others have done for me. So yes, this was a massive squirrel, and I hunted that for months. Very good stuff. When it comes to biology, I will tell you,
I'm trying to make some
Douglas Axe's book, Undeniable, brilliant work. If you're very well read and you don't mind $1.50 words, Signature in the Cell by Stephen Meyer, awesome book. Highly recommend aspirin. I used a bottle. He speaks at a very high level, but if you take your time through and you read it, it's awesome. It's fantastic. Those are the best ones on bio.
Spike.
Oh, Spike. Okay, I don't know that he probably has a book, and he'll probably, if I ever get an email from him again, he'll probably yell at me for not knowing this, but I don't know if he has a book, but he does have a video series, and Spike Pissar's on astronomy is awesome. I think he's going to have to redo his entire second video now that the James Webb Space Telescope just illuminated everything he was talking about and just made it more obvious. And Spike did it. Understand that Spike started as an atheist, worked for NASA, spent all his time there, and from what he saw, what he did in his career, went, there's no way there isn't a God. Some of those, to me, are probably the most meaningful and reliable sources, because they're people that really bought into that and then went, stop, think, and moved on. So.
The one I'd suggest is the one I was pushing towards you.
Oh.
Because it's a good all-around.
This is brutal. This is fantastic. So this is Norm Geisler, who's passed away, and Frank Turek. So you've probably heard of Frank Turek. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. This is the best barroom brawl book on atheism versus believing in God I've ever read. I did not stick it in the shredder. Those are my notes. I didn't you know, it really wasn't that bad. Back up. No, all of these. They talk about so much stuff, and this is the Flintstones vitamins of reading atheism versus Christianity. Brilliant work. And I'm more of a peacemaker than a peacekeeper. I'm kind of the guy that'll see a fight, pull out draw a sword, and say, there will be peace. That being said, Greg Kokel wrote a book called Tactics. I really needed this book, and it's been wonderful. So if you ever get the chance, that's another great book. There are so many. In 6 Days is awesome. If you want to see everybody from every field of science tell you why they believe in God and they didn't before, In 6 Days is awesome. They did another one that had another 50 or 60 people in on the 7th day. Great stuff. So I will keep you here all night. Better stop asking. I'm kidding. Any more questions?
Do you recommend them to go to Missler?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if you want to see, he's got great series. So Chuck Missler, he's gone home. His organization, Koinonia House, has some phenomenal stuff. And if you think I squirrel, Chuck Missler had a handler. I guarantee it. I'm pretty sure there was somebody at the back of the room with a squirrel. But he has some phenomenal stuff. And what you should know about that is Chuck Missler was a data guy. He was an analyst of the ones and zeros. Everything he said, he really knew that. And he takes an analytical view of everything he goes over. He does like the entire Bible in 24 hours. He did Genesis. And he spent an hour and a half on each day and went through each one. Awesome stuff. It's so hard to pick them. There is no best. And the beauty of this is there's so many that they're so worth reading because...
Just come up and start taking pictures. We don't collect stuff that's not helpful.
Yeah, I totally cheated. I went to a bookstore and I said, do you get a discount if you buy more? And they said, yeah. I said, good, throw them on until they're free. That's the only reason I have all those. So,
all right, we probably ought to be moving on here. So
we brought a whole bunch of food because I was counting on a bunch of people. So please do not leave without food in your hand because I don't need to eat all that.
So if you want to come up, afterwards and talk to Duane, I know there are a lot of people in here who know Duane quite well, so.
Sorry.
So if there's somebody who doesn't know him, don't monopolize the discussion. So anyway, but yeah, so we'll go ahead and break here. I just have a couple of announcements. If, in case you missed the plate going around and you wanted to give something to Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, we do have a donation box in the back, which it's out there on the table. So feel free. The only thing that allows us to bring speakers of this quality in are donations. That's pretty much it. So June 14th, it will be our next speaker, Mr. Ed Jolman. He'll be speaking. He is the chief editor of Foundations magazine for Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship. He's also a creation safari leader. He will be speaking on, yes, the Bible says the earth is about 6,000 years old. During the same time frame as his talk, June 13th through 15th, the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference will be occurring. It is sponsored by Christian Home Educators of Colorado. These people reach the young people, and the young people in our generation are the same people that the Marxists are targeting for destruction. So we need to really reach the young people in our generation. And if you are not a young person, then do everything you can to find a young person to mentor or to talk to or to begin sharing what you know about the Lord with, because I guarantee you these kids are going to be lost because at the hands of the Marxists in our society. So anyway, Rocky Mountain Christian Home Educators of Colorado is an excellent organization. They've got probably 100,000 kids within their umbrella who are being homeschooled through the way that they are facilitating that to be done. So would strongly encourage you to look into them and go to their conference, even if you don't have kids, to see what it's all about. And it's a very encouraging thing to see. Incidentally, Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship has a booth at the homeschool conference. We have for many years in the past, and we certainly have one this year. It will be held at, let's see, what is it? Denver Marriott, Denver Tech Center this year. You can look it up on the web. Just Google, check our Christian Home Educators of Colorado or Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference. Either one of those will get you to their website if you want to see how you go about signing up. And we need help manning our booth this year, so we have a sign-up list in the back. So if anybody would like to help out with manning our booth on one of those days, find that sign-up sheet and go ahead and put your signature on there. Let's see, finally, I need to make this announcement. We have been looking for a secretary for Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship for many years now, and we haven't been able to find somebody to step up to the plate. Here's my recommendation for anybody who would like to consider helping us out in that capacity. It's a lot of work. There's no pay, but you'll get treasure in heaven. So if you're interested in doing that, if you've got some time that you would like to direct toward the kingdom work, I would be very happy to speak with you. You can come up and talk to me after the meeting or get in touch with me by email. You can find the email address for Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship on YoungEarth.org. So anyway, that said, let's finish this thing up, and don't forget about the food over there. And were you making a sign to me? Or?
Not to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting in trouble with Mom and trying to get back at it.
Okay, all right. Well, I haven't seen any squirrels waving at me, so. All right, so with that, we're adjourned.